We're going to go below the Smurfs.
And it's, hey, y'all, glad you're here, chasing relevance. Hey, guys, this week's episode, we're talking about being dads. We're talking about the things we were taught, what we learned along the way, and the things we're continuing to learn and grow in. This week, we had the opportunity to have one of our good friends, Jared Montague, sit down with us and share his experiences and the things that he learns and continues to grow in. We hope you enjoy it, so stay tuned. Hey, y'all. We're glad you're here today with Chasing Relevance. Today's is our first guest speaker, a good friend of ours, both Scott and I's, Mr. Jared Montague, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And I said that correctly, right?
You did. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, make sure you correct me if I'm wrong on that, man. I don't want to mess up. But today, we were really wanting to talk about being a dad in today's world and what that's like for us, how that has changed since we were kids. Things that we kind of grew up with, what our dads were like, and what that time was like, but also what we learned from it, and kind of how we take that into becoming a dad ourselves, and how it changes our lives and our priorities and how we spend time and all those areas of life. But the biggest thing is what it means to us and what we're taking forward with it. But yeah, Jared, man, we're so glad you're here. We're so glad you're spending time with us. This is exciting. This is fun. And we've had some really great heart-to-hearts, both Scott and I on our own with you, sitting down, just talking. And so we thought you would be perfect for someone to sit in with us and have this discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So Scott, why don't you go ahead and kind of lead us into this, man?
Sure. Well, like you said, this is about what it's like being a dad in today's world. And I have a feeling that with our three different family dynamics, we'll have different stories that brought us to where we are. But I also believe that the three of us have a lot of commonalities in how we parent and why we do some of the things we do and what we're trying to teach our kids. I know for me, having a blended family of hers, mine, and ours has been a very interesting dynamic for the last 20 years. And so, I think our perspectives are different, but I think our goals are very much the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You get all three of us together. You mentioned, Scott, way different experiences and stories, all boiling down to the same focal point. We're just trying to raise kids.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know with our kids, your kids and mine go to school together. So they're of the same age. And that's really kind of what introduced us to each other. Boys playing football together, the girls playing basketball together. And so we just kept running into each other and connecting. And then there was commonality with my wife and her job and your job. So it was, it just kind of grew that way. I think that's one of the reasons I was excited to have you on, is because I know DNR have a mutual respect for you and as a person and as a father and husband, based on what we know about you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you.
Well, it's, it is what it is. It takes that, I think, in today's world, it takes that kind of fatherhood, brotherhood, if you will, of support and being able to talk to each other about different challenges and the wins, not just the hard part, but the good stuff.
Absolutely.
We also got to experience that with our girls in drama and things like that. It's just that common fatherly bond.
Just yesterday I had an experience, I think, that will hit the nail on the head of what you're trying to say. Is years ago when I was in college, we lived in a house, and over the years a lot of different guys moved in, moved out. Well, yesterday we decided to do because everybody's being socially distant, right? So we decided to do a Zoom meeting of all the former roommates.
Oh wow!
And so it was like looking at Hollywood Squares or the Brady Bunch, right, on your screen, right? Because there's so many. And I wanted to be the guy in the middle, but anyway, so we're all sort of, yeah, exactly, looking down, and we've all remained in touch over the year. Really, we decided just to have everybody get a little snapshot of what's going on, and that's what we did. You know, this is what I do, this is where I live, and so on. And the last guy to ring in, a good friend Travis, he's like, I wish I had something super special to say, but all I'm doing is raising kids. And I just had to, you know, time out, Travis. Of anything you could do,
right?
That's the most important thing. And
Yes.
With all the guys that were on that call yesterday, there was, you know, 7 or 8 of us. There was over 30 kids.
Wow!
Right?
Wow.
Between all of us, right? And that's what we're doing, right? We're raising kids.
Yeah.
And I know it doesn't sound glamorous, and it doesn't make the marquee all the time.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the thing that's the most fulfilling, if you really are thinking about what is really going to be most impactful, it's those kids and the joy and the challenge they bring, and the fun, and sometimes not so fun.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it really brought things into focus for me when he said that. So.
That's awesome. It's a great way to put it.
Well, listen, why don't we kind of start off? I think it'd be neat to just give a quick picture of kind of what it was like growing up with each of our dads. And you know, Scott, maybe you start off with just a picture of that, of just kind of what it was like, you know, with your dad and that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. From the time I can remember until I was about 13, my dad was a long haul truck driver. So he was absent a lot. And that made my mother the ruling hand of authority in our home. And she really had to assume both roles the majority of the time. When my dad came home, the whole dynamic of the house changed. And there was rarely the wait till your father gets home. She just handled it, you know. she just handled it.
Yeah.
So, but when Dad got home, we knew that there were 2 different houses. When Dad was home, when Mom was running the show.
Sure.
We could push my mom. We couldn't even lean into my dad. It was, you know, he was a trucker. What else can I say? You know,
he was dad.
He was dad. Yeah. Yeah. And then he moved into a more of a managerial role. And so he was home more often. And that's when I really learned from him, from 13 to 16, 17, until I left home. Yeah. And so that was kind of my story in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Jared, what about you, man?
So my dad always came across as pretty authoritative, or authoritative, I guess is the right word. And now I get it where he was coming from, because I'm now where he was, right? And a house full of kids and trying to make ends meet and all that kind of stuff. But my dad came across as authoritative, but it didn't take long for him to let the guard down, and you always knew that you were loved. And a couple of experiences, I mean, that my dad would wake up on Saturday mornings and give my mom a break. My dad would leave for work early during the week and get home late from work. And so my mom and us kids, we did most of the cooking, but on Saturday mornings, that was my dad's time to shine. And so he'd wake up and we'd have the full meal deal, man. It was great. Saturdays were awesome.
That's cool.
And so that's one experience that really showed me that, hey, my dad is pretty interested in taking care of us. And then we grew up on 6 acres, and we had a rather large garden. And where we lived in California, it was warm and things grew like crazy. So every Saturday, and then during harvest time, you know, every 3rd day, we were down in that garden. And that's where my dad taught me how to work. And really that fun.
Yeah, right.
It kind of stunk, actually, and he'd get mad, throwing dirt clods at each other, and you know, was that a weed or is that a piece of corn? Oh, shoot. But my dad taught me, if it's got to be done, you just get to it and you do it. And figure out a way. And so those are the two things. That's the kind of dad I grew. He's since passed away, unfortunately, but that's the kind of dad I grew up with. Never a doubt that he was there for us and wanted to teach us everything that he did.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's good stuff. Yeah. My dad was, so just a real quick backdrop. I mean, he grew up in a home where he was a hired hand. He was a worker, and the relationship he had with his dad wasn't a real like hug on you, encourage you, build you up. Like his dad didn't show up and watch him play any sports kind of thing. He was a kind of a hired hand. So when he had a son, he really wanted to be loving on me and encourage me. He was like my biggest fan. Anything I was doing, he was always just telling me, hey, whatever you want to do, you put your mind to it, you can do it. And so that was kind of what I grew up with is him always encouraging me and pumping me up. His because he was a worker and that's what he knew. I mean, that's what I grew up in the relationship with dad is he worked a lot and he was a grinder and get it done. And nobody's going to give you any handouts. And so he really did teach me, what it means to earn it. But it was also kind of like that too. Like my mom was great, but it was kind of like, I knew if I didn't toe the line, if dad had to come on and deal with it. I was like, phew, I didn't want to have to go that direction. But oh yeah. But no, he was, he was great because of the fact that he always just taught me, don't let people abuse you. And I think because he dealt with some, he's like, my dad's the kind of guy, because of a business he dealt with people every day, all the time. And people love, his name's Dean, being around Dino. Like everybody loves Dino. And whether if you don't like him, you at least respect him, because he's kind of like he says what he means what he says, and that's it. Like there's no gray area.
No interpretation there.
Yeah. And so, that's kind of, what I grew up with is just a guy who was a grinder. He was a hardworking dude. And, he absolutely did his best trying to give us what he didn't have. And that was just, letting us know he loved us and building us up. But it was fun for my dad as work. So Jared, I get it. Cause like my dad would be like, hey, today we're going to go set posts and build fence, man. Doesn't that sound fun? And it was like, oh, really?
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So DR, what's your current family dynamic like?
Yeah. So I became a father a little later in life. I didn't get married till I was 30. Had my first when I was 36. And currently I have 3 boys, ages 8, 10, and 12. And man, it was one of my biggest dreams in life. One of them was to be, we talked about dream jobs the other day. One of them was to be a dad.
Right.
And I didn't grow up with brothers. I grew up with one sister, but I had friends that grew up with brothers. I always longed to have a brother. And so when we started having boys, I was just tickled, man, because it was just like, this is cool. Like these dudes are going to grow up together. They're going to be the best of friends, worst of enemies at times. But that's how they are. I mean, they have a ton of fun together, and there's chuckling and laughing, and they say, somebody's squalling, and somebody got into it with the other one.
Yep.
No, but yeah, that's kind of,
brothers.
Yeah, that's kind of, where I'm at right now. And in our dynamic of how many kids I have and what that looks like.
Cool. Yeah. Jared, how about you?
Yeah. DR, kind of like you, I spent my early 20s and my mid 20s and my late 20s being a ski bum.
Yeah.
I didn't get married until I was 29, and that bum mentality quickly was replaced with having kids. And so 29, had our first kid. I was 31. It was a son, my son Benjamin, and so he's the oldest. I got 2 daughters, a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old son. And so, my dad taught me, he said, when I had my first, he said, if having a kid doesn't change you, there's something wrong with you. And so I think about that almost every day, actually. And as parents, we spend a lot of time change, right? Don't do this, do that. And then I got to look in the mirror and say, how much am I changing? I'm sure trying to get my kids to change a lot, but how much am I changing to help facilitate their change? But my dad, I love going home. It's great to come to work and it's great to step away, right? It's cool. And because, we gotta do our thing in terms of supporting our families, but I love going home. And I love coming home and my son's outside digging in the snow, and my two daughters are upstairs, kind of bickering back and forth as to who's going to do the dishes, and my oldest son doesn't live at home anymore. He's in Texas serving a mission for our church. But the conversations that I have with him now are light years above what I ever expected. They're way more on par than I ever expected, just in terms of like life experiences. It's been great. I love it. It's awesome. Love coming home.
Yeah, that is so cool. That's a great point.
Perfect.
Yeah, not a lot of people. I shouldn't say not a lot, but there are those out there that can't say that. That can't say I love going home every night to my family and my life. Especially in times like this where things are getting real hard and stress levels are high, and that's so awesome.
Yeah,
I have a little bit different story. I got married at 20, the first time. So I had my first child at 22, and I did not take that nearly as seriously as I could have or should have. And so between the age of 22 and 30, 22 and 30, 31, I had 4 children. I had 4 girls, and my son was my youngest. And in that time frame, I made a lot of mistakes, and I did a lot of things that I regret and wish I could have changed. But I've since, maturity has a way of changing the way you look at things a lot of times. Would I change some of those things? Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. Would I change the outcome? Probably not, because of where I am now and where my children are now. And they went through some tough things, but they're all healthy. They're all happy, and so am I. And so in 2000, I met my current wife, and I didn't really technically adopt, but I brought in 2 more children. So I have a 35-year-old stepson and a 23-year-old stepdaughter. And then we had our own child together. So there are 7 children ranging from 15 to 35. And
it's a baseball team.
It is a baseball team if my wife and I play. Yeah. Yeah. It's rare that we get them all together, but it does happen occasionally. And when it does, I feel like I am the luckiest guy in the world.
Yeah.
And I think what really changed my perspective on things is when my oldest daughter had her first child, which was just a year ago. And then my oldest son had his first child just a few months ago. And I realized that he was older than I was when I met his mom. Because I was 31 when I met my wife, and he's 35 now. And I looked at my wife and I said, do you realize that he's 4 years older than I was when we met? And she lost it. She's like, wait, what? Yeah. I was 4 years younger than our son when you and I first met. And that just it blew it out of the water. But now being a grandfather, everything is different.
Yeah.
But it's been so fun to watch the older kids now become parents and watch them change, and how their priorities literally changed overnight.
Yeah.
So I'm super proud. I'm super happy and fun for excited for them as parents. But my job now is to be the parent and grandparent that I wasn't.
Well, the cool thing is now as a grandparent, you get to be like, have fun with them, spoil them all day, and then be like, hey, here you go, mom and dad.
Yep, exactly
sugar,
right.
Sugar, now go home.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and that's going to happen.
Well, that's a good lead in to kind of this next little area that I wanted us to maybe share, is if there's a story or something that when you became a dad, like the first time, first child, that moment of all of a sudden realize, wow, I'm a dad now, maybe how that changed you, or what really you felt and experienced, in that. And I'll kind of lead this off maybe, and you guys can kind of, you probably, trigger a few things, but I know for me, being that I was too selfish in my 20s, just flat out, plain and simple. I had work and play to do, and I didn't want to, answer to anyone or anything. And so I was just working and grinding and playing a lot. But when I became a dad, we were married for, close to 6 years, and we had gone through multiple miscarriages. And it kind of started to be what we were starting to be told is that the chances of us becoming parents of our own children was probably slim to none. And that was hard for me to take. That was hard for me to accept. In fact, I didn't accept it. I just was like, I was like, no, I'm not willing to just be okay with that. And even though that we started to like seriously look at, okay, adoption, what could that look like? And adoption is a beautiful thing, and it's a wonderful thing. And we have family members that have adopted kids, and it's amazing. I mean, I love being around these families and the dynamic of that. But I for me, on that point in time, I wasn't willing to accept that, and I wasn't willing to go there. I just, and it kind of got to a point where Teddy and my wife just said, we're just going to step away from this. We're just going to step away from it. We're going to take a break, and we're going to just start, looking at maybe adopting. And then it was like all of a sudden, hey, you're pregnant again. And it was kind of like, we couldn't get excited anymore, right, because we didn't know how long it was going to last.
Yeah.
And, but I remember we had that first one, and it wasn't the kind of delivery you want. It was rough. And of course there's a whole, all kinds of things I could tell you about it, but it was rough. And he was in the NICU for the first like 3 to 5 days. I can't remember, but it was a tough go in the beginning of it. But it all of a sudden, man, I all of a sudden just went into that Papa Bear mode. And I all of a sudden just realized like this was, the best thing that ever happened to me. And I knew with the gift that I was given, and it also made me realize there are some people that they don't get to that point where they get to have their own kids. And so it made me really understand and realize some of the things that other people go through, not being able to have their own and relating to that. But yeah, that first time having my oldest Colt, and I mentioned this the other day, I got to name him. I had to give up all rights to name any other kids. But I got to name him Colt McCrae Bledsoe. And yeah, that was, and everyone after that, it's just been one of the coolest things that that's happened to me. And it's the best job I've ever had, for sure.
For sure. Yep. How about you, Jared? How was your first arrival?
Well, DR, that was a great story, man. Thanks for sharing that. So when my wife, 6 months before my wife got pregnant, I was I was working at a hotel in downtown Salt Lake, and front desk, operations, that kind of stuff. And anyway, the director of sales at the hotel called me upstairs, and basically they wanted to promote me to sales manager. And I'm like, heck no, man, I had none of that. Those guys, they wear ties, they're stuffy, they never seem happy. Why would I want to do that? I'm like, forget that. So I completely turned her down, and she was a little bit what? But I told her why, just because the people up there just weren't having a good time. And I can't, if you're going to spend 8 hours a day doing something, you need to like what you're doing. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I turned it down. I told my wife that, and she looked at me crossways. And 6 months later, my wife's pregnant, right? General manager comes back down to me. She says, "Hey, Jared, we'd like to have that talk again. Some things have changed up in the sales office." And I had that conversation with the GM. I didn't accept it right there. I went home, talked to my wife, and my wife looked at me and she said, "You will take that job." and
Yes, ma'am.
my kid wasn't even born yet, right? But it was at that moment that the gravity of what I'd got myself into, and I chose to get myself into, the gravity of what was coming in 3 months' time was, this isn't a game anymore, right? This is not like, oh, am I going to have enough money to pay my rent, get my season pass? It was way beyond that. And so I took the job, and it stressed me out and it stretched me a lot. But to be able to make that transition, knowing that and my wife was working at the time too, and supporting our household, but knowing that it was going to be heaped upon me, that this is now my focus, I have to change. And so, bless my wife's heart, I changed. And I'm glad that I did, because that just brought into focus all the things that we've been talking about earlier, is what is your main responsibility? And so even before my first kid was born, I had that real sense of, okay, now it's time to do something different. And then, of course, when he was born, we took full advantage. The insurance allows for up to 3 days in the hot. We're like, heck yeah, man! Room service, come in, bring a bed, I'm in. And we enjoyed that time, and then went home, and then another just real quick situation. Not too long after we'd come home with the kid, maybe a month or two, I'd come home from work, and someone knocked at the door. And I was in the kitchen. My wife had our son, he was born now, in her arms, and she goes to the door, and it was the UPS guy. And the UPS guy, looking at my wife, says, "Oh, is your mom home? We got a package for you." Oh. Right. My wife still looks young, but then the UPS dude must have thought I was robbing the cradle for sure. But again, that just made, wow, we are young. Do we even know what we're doing?
Right. Right.
But again, just one of those kind of in your face experiences, like, well, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to figure it out real fast.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
funny.
Some experiences.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, because I was young. I was 22, and I had no idea what I was doing. I actually thought I was going to participate in the birthing process. So we're sitting in the room, and it's, we're probably 18 hours into it. And the doctor comes in, and I'm sitting in the chair eating Subway, literally eating a Subway sandwich. And he comes in and he goes, "All right," he goes, I think we're gonna go ahead and break your water." So I wrap up the sandwich and I throw it away, and I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" And he's like, "You're not doing anything. We're gonna just take care of this right here." And so
he's like, "You've already done enough."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was my first, like, this really isn't about me at all.
Right.
Realization. And after the fact, our daughter also spent 3 days in the NICU, just with fever and things, just as a preventative thing. and we get home and like you said, DR, I was 22, and like you said, in your 20s, you were too selfish. I was too, and I did not fulfill that role the way I should have, and the way I could have, and I very well could have. I chose not to, and I chose to live like a 22-year-old for the next, however many years, and went through some different situations, but ended up with the 3 kids and well, actually the 4 kids. But that was my introduction into fatherhood, and now I look back at that and I think to myself, I don't know if it could have been worse other than just not being present, but it motivates and drives everything I do now. Everything
Right.
I've done in the last 15 years, actually, since Tess has been born, since our youngest has been born. That birth changed my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I was 36, 35, 36. So or 30, 34 or 35. And my perspective changed,
Mm-hmm.
and my priorities changed. And, we had been through a miscarriage prior to that, 2 years or a year or two prior to that too. So everything shifted in 2004 when she was born.
Mm.
And from that point forward, I feel like I've been the best father, grandfather that I can be.
Mm.
And that's my goal, and in my mind, that's part of my legacy to the rest of the world. Not what they do, but how they impact others.
What you learn from it, and
Yep.
and then make the next day
Exactly.
a better one.
Yep. And what I can impart on them about, I've been very, very honest with my kids and my ex-wives about that time period in my life, and not always why I did the things I did, but I have reconciled with them about those things, and know that going forward, it's going to be very different.
Yeah.
Well, and you're going to have the opportunity because of your experiences. You're going to run into somebody. You're going to hear something. You're going to see something. You're going to be able to, mentor, coach,
Right.
share
Yeah.
some wisdom
Yeah.
that somebody's going to need, and you're going to be the guy that's going to help them get through that.
I hope so. And again, that's kind of a goal, for us is to impact as many people as we can.
Have any of you ever met a father who, if he's honest with himself, felt he's always done it perfectly?
No,
True.
no,
Yeah,
definitely
no.
not.
Yeah,
No,
and
I've met
so-
fathers that won't admit that to themselves.
True
and
that.
That's okay too. But
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that you share your what you perceive as a deficiency as a young man, a young father. But look at the experience that you had and what you've gained
right,
in retrospect, as you look
Right.
at, oh man, I wish I would have done that differently. But now you have the opportunity to do that.
right,
You're super fortunate, Scott, because of those experiences have shaped you, and
no question.
and now you're able to do how you want to do it because you have the perspective and the lens of looking back
Right.
at how you had.
Right,
You know.
and that lens has changed. I've shifted the way I look at it to using it to an advantage of mine. We just lost DR.
Okay, we're back.
Jared or Scott, so when you guys you have any stories of something you really learned in a moment you were in as being a dad, or something that you really was a kind of a growing learning point that you like? One thing I've done is I've caught myself doing things that I sound just like my dad. And I'm like, oh, I so just sounded like my dad on that right there. And it's, it's kind of funny because like, it's not sometimes it's those things you're like, oh, I'd never do that to my kid, and then you turn around and do it.
Yeah.
But do you guys have anything that you think of right off that was like a moment where you just really?
But I'll take a shot at it, Scott.
Okay.
I have this picture of my dad, and we grew up camping and fishing and hiking and all that good stuff. And I have this picture of my dad. It's not a digital picture, right? It's one of those old school paper, like you have to go to the store and have it developed kind of thing. And so my dad's fishing, and he's in Kenley Creek up here, not too far from us, and he's got his hip waders on, and he's in the middle of the water, right? He's not fishing from the side, not scared to get wet. He's right in it. And I've had this picture for probably 20 years. And every time I look at it, it reminds me, man, you're not going to get nothing done standing on the side, standing on the shoreline, right?
No doubt.
If you want to get that big mini, man, you got to hop in the water and you got to get after it. And I look at that picture, and it reminds me, whatever situation I'm in with my kids specifically, or even relationships with my wife, if you want to get the payoff, you can't be standing on the sidelines. You got to get in there as a dad or in there as a husband and help with whatever needs to happen. You just got to get after it. And that's the way my dad always was. If there was something that needed to be done, he just got in it and got dirty, figuratively or literally, and just got after it and made sure that whatever needed to happen took place. And there's 100 stories I have about that, but that's the general principle, is that just get in it, get after it, get it done.
I think that's a great point. There's a book, and man, I wish I could remember the name of this book. I remember my mom gave it to me, and it was a fantastic book because it really was talking about, like, as a father, how you want to equip your kids. And the thing is sometimes as dads, we forget to tell them that, like, hey, I have fears, or I have failures that you don't even know about. And allowing your kids to hear that, wow, dad's, he screwed up too. And dad, he's got things that, he's challenged by. And being in the trenches with them, allowing them to hear that and learn from that and listen. And then helping them understand, like, this is a process and you got to go through it. And it just doesn't happen. But, it's like what you just said, you got to be out in the water. You got to be in the river. You got to be where the flow's at. And if you just try to hang out on the side of the bank or stay, where the water's not moving, it's hard to really grasp and learn from that. And I think that's something that, as dads, that is our number one, is preparing them to realize that there's the ups and there's the downs and there's the tough stuff we go through. And that's what makes us better. But letting them know, because I think sometimes it's easy for dads to want to, dads is, to a kid, my boys thought I was a superhero, like for reals, until they were about 7. And then all of a sudden they realized, like, Dad doesn't have any superpowers.
Yeah. Then they saw the cape in the washer and like, what?
They literally, I had them believing I was a superhero until about age 7. And they all started realizing, like, nah, man, Dad. But it's like letting them know that, like, you have things you struggle with. And even today, letting them know, like, I'm going to screw up today, boys. And then we're all going to learn from it,
Yeah. I can't think of a single time where my dad didn't teach. He only taught in the terms of the ideal, right? Like, this is what we're reaching for. Now, of course, my dad was, there was latitude there. If we didn't quite make it, he didn't get all over us, right? But he always taught in the terms of the ideal, knowing that more often than not, we're probably not going to make it there first time. And I really appreciated that, because that gave me something to shoot for.
Yeah.
And so with my kids, it's the same thing. We always I think we always need to teach in the terms of the ideal. This is the benchmark we're shooting for, but have compassion with our kids, have compassion with our wives, because and compassion with ourselves, because we're not always going to make it. You know, we're going to strive, but we're not always going to hit the ball out of the park every time.
There was a gal, and I can't remember the company she runs, or I wish I remember her name, but she said at her dinner table growing up, her dad every night would ask the kids at the table, what did you fail at today? And he wanted to hear they had a failure, because his philosophy is that if you're not trying and if you're not failing, you're not trying. That if you're not failing at something, you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to learn, to grow, to be better. Yeah. And so he celebrated the failures. So he was like, he wanted to hear that, you know, they tried out for the school play and didn't get it. He was like, hey, right on. You know, what'd you learn from that? What'd you take from that? And what are you going to do different next time? And so he celebrated failures at the dinner table. I loved that. I love that idea.
Yeah. Was that Sarah Blakely?
It might've been.
I can't remember. I know that same story. I don't remember who it was though. Yeah, you know, my dad was I grew up blue collar, man, and he and my mom both were just hardworking people. So, you know, work ethic in my house was really, really important. And I gave up on that in about 7th grade when it came to school, because I stopped caring about school, but you know, working, he's by far one of the hardest working people I've ever known. But at the same time, he was kind of a hard man. And in that role of truck driver, he had to be. I get that. Yeah. And there's all kinds of stress that comes along with being gone all the time and not knowing what's going on at home, especially without cell phones and things like that were way in the future. But the one thing I learned from watching him, more than from what he directly taught me, was about evolving as a person. Because he went from, a hard man. He was a hard man when he was driving truck. He, you know, his career path took a different turn. He got more into management and office, and then started working for Gateway 2000. And at that point, he was not a very tolerant person, and he will openly admit that now. But to watch him evolve from, probably age 40 to where he is now, and becoming such a different person, one, gave me hope in knowing that if I wanted to change, I could change. And two, watching him go from the hard-nosed person that he was to the teddy bear he is now, it gave me not necessarily hope, but it gave me like permission, because I spent a lot of time in that kind of condition myself. But for me it was more self-absorbed and selfish gratifications and things like that, not being gone and being hard conditioned by life like he was. I think he grew up a lot like your dad did, DR, with not a whole lot of affection in the home, and you know, blue collar farmers, laborers. They actually they built their garage, lived in their garage when they were children while they built the home, you know, things like that. So he came from a whole different perspective, and to see where he is now is so heartwarming and encouraging to me, knowing that I can become a better person at any time that I choose to.
Yes, that's it right there.
Yep. And so for my kids, they don't know him like that. If I ever talk about that kind of thing, they're like, "Are you insane? He is a teddy bear," and he is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there was a time when he was just not the guy to mess with.
But Scott, isn't that the principle we're trying to teach our kids anyway? I mean,
absolutely.
You're recognizing that hey, I can change, right? And more better than that, you're recognizing that there are things that you need to change. I recognize the same thing.
Yes.
And to allow our kids the opportunity to recognize that perfection is not the goal right now.
Correct.
It's striving to be better every day.
Yep.
Right?
Excellence.
You can be excellent without being perfect.
Yes.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
you know.
Yes.
And, so I think it's important for our kids. I've had a conversation with my daughter recently. In fact, a series of conversations. She's comparing herself to everybody, right?
Right.
She's 15. That's what, if we're not careful, we all do that. But
Yep.
she's especially in that spot. And her body image, or her talents, or the clothes that she wears, or whatever.
Everything. Every little thing.
Yeah. And what she's done is she takes her perception of what she feels is her worst attribute and compares it to someone and she takes that best attribute of hers. And you'll never win that. And so we've had some great conversations helping her to understand, Juliet, the way you are right now is awesome. If you recognize that there's something to change, great, let's work on it. But stop. You guys know Cody Hansen. I think I was mentioning this to you yesterday, DR, but a friend named Cody Hansen, he said, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm.
And,
No question. That's such a great quote.
It's such a great quote. And so these are some of the things that I've been working on with my kids, is to, don't compare yourself. Just do your best. You can be excellent without being perfect.
Yes. And the pursuit of excellence, you may never become even excellent, but I promise you will become better.
Exactly.
And progress is always my goal, for sure.
Yeah, and I think like the way I define excellence, or I've used it is giving your best.
Yep.
And your best today will be different your best a week from today, because you're hopefully learning and growing and realizing, hey, there's, I could have done this a little different kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, every day I learn a little something from my boys. The scary part is when they'll be like, hey guys, this is what dad does, and they'll act like they're doing an impersonation of me or how I come across. I'm like, really? My wife will look at me and she's like, yes, that's what you do.
That's
what
on.
you do. And I'm like, oh man, I got to work on that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I think this would be another topic to come back and touch on in another episode, is about guiding our kids through that whole process of comparison and self-worth and self-development and all that kind of thing, because it's such a massive topic, and especially now in the Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok world, it's impossible to not compare yourselves, and to me, it's very easily becomes toxic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's another discussion for another day, but just what I've learned is that if you're not sharing with your children goals and aspirations and teaching them how to do that, something else is going to come in and fill that void. Is going to teach them something else that you don't want them to teach, to learn.
100%.
Well, and I think this is a great way to kind of start wrapping this up, is being a dad in today's world. Okay. So like when we were kids,
right,
there was none of this stuff. Okay. Right. And like what you guys were saying, these kids are being left to kind of find their identities through comparisons of the internet, right? Through these different people showing their TikTok this or whatever that, and Instagram this and that. And I mean, I'm going to tell you, it's that way for adults, how they start comparing themselves to what's going on with other people's lives. And the thing that as a dad that I realized with my boys, and then I'm not good at this, but I try to focus on this, is like, one, I want them to get their worth and their value through Teddy and I as parents, letting them know, hey, this is who you are. This is how you are. This is how the good Lord made you. And this is the things that you need to work on and learn and grow and go after. And you got to earn it and help build them up, so where they're not, like you just said, they're not seeking that by comparison of what they see other people doing. And in today's world, it's tough because, I mean, it's the hot thing, and everybody's, you know, plugging into it and looking at it, and, you know, it's easy to be entertained. And then they say, you know, you kind of get sucked into it. But I think with these kids, the one thing I try to do, and it's tough right now with where we're at, we're living in such a different environment than where we have been the last 10 years, but is being out, being hands-on with them, and getting them doing things where they're having to learn and figure things out, and then, you know, interacting with them. Like, I want my boys and I to be like best buddies, and I'm hoping we can be from here on out. But along with being best buddies, I still got to be dad, and then finding that balance in there. And man, I love going and doing stuff with my boys and us having fun. But, you know, I have to step back and then say, you know, hey guys, we need to work on this. We need to talk about this, or what have you. Yeah. But all of those challenges of being a dad, like, if I just stop and not get focused on what I think I need to get done, but if I just stop and think about what can I do that's going to really show my boys that, like, I'm into them, I'm into who they are and what they're becoming, and what can I, you know, like, that's the best part of my day. And it's tough because as we're all trying to make a living and raise our kids and, you know, support them and so forth, it's easy to get wound up with what we got on our plates. But you know, today our kids need us grabbing and hugging them, right, talking to them, getting in their face and connecting. They need it more now than ever.
Well, and that speaks to one of the topics we just talked about a few days ago, and that's just you have to be present. You have to be present in the moment, not physically just sitting there. Right. It takes presence and conscious effort and recognition to be, you know, it's scary. It's hard.
Kids need acknowledgement, and if they don't get it from their home life, from their parents, from their siblings, they're going to go seek acknowledgement somewhere else.
They will find it.
And you won't be able to control that, and they will find it, and it may not be what you want them to find.
Yeah, you know? Exactly right. Yeah. Well, I think I am optimistically or cautiously optimistic for the future. I think with you know, guys like us and dads like us, being able to openly discuss these things, being openly honest about, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that's where we can have the most impact in just bringing to light the challenges that are out there, and hopefully opening discussions, even if it's just among other people, not involving us, just having table discussion about all of these things, all these challenges and things out there that we face as parents, but that also that kids are facing. You know, and Jared, we're going to do an episode about what it's like to be a kid in today's world. And DR is going to bring his son on, his 12-year-old, and I'm going to bring Tess on. We should have Juliet come in and if she's open to it, and have a father-child discussion about these things.
Well, she's got time.
Right? Yeah.
You know, this is kind of just something I'll just say, and then I'm good, is the one thing that I know when all of a sudden I'm struggling with one of my boys, because I got one in middle school now, one almost middle school, and one who's just a turd, is
that's a technical term. That's a technical fatherhood term.
Yeah, he's the youngest, he's the third. But is whatever's going on, when things start to seem like they're getting tough, and I'm starting to have some friction, and I'm having to kind of get on their case, and we're kind of dealing with some attitude on this, the one thing I start realizing is that I've been busy, and I have not been just hugging on my kids enough. I have not been getting in their space, hugging on them, loving on them, telling them, hey man, I appreciate you, I love you, and then just checking in with them. And when I start just doing that a lot, it usually will help break down some of the little barriers I'm running into. And I think one of the number one things that's worked on me, when my parents did it, and I see it with my boys, is loving on them every day. And then you have a place to kind of go from when you got to deal with the problems. But if it's like it's been, everybody's been busy in life and days go by, and then all of a sudden it gets rough.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. It's hard to have that comfortable, open conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm continually learning, guys. I mean, every day.
No
And
question.
I'm striving to be the best dad I can be. And with that, there's going to be a lot of failures. But the biggest thing I can say is I do literally sit down with my boys when I really screw up, whether I got angry and I reacted out of just anger, or whether I just got short with them because I thought I was busy with something. I will sit down with them and I will tell them what I should have done, how I should have handled it, what I was trying to get across to them, what I needed them to understand, but how I need to do it better. And sometimes I'll just be like, I need you guys to forgive me. And thankfully, my boys do.
Right.
Well, that's how our kids learn how to forgive. We got to ask for it.
Yep.
That recognition that we're not perfect. I've done DR, holy cow, volumes. I could fill volumes of the number of times I've had to ask my kids to look past my shortcomings and show me a little mercy,
Absolutely.
and it's allowed me to do the same for them as they're willing to, it's okay, Dad, and I'm, one of my biggest faults is, I leave the house, come to work, and then I come home and I immediately focus on all the things that, why isn't that done? Why are the dishes still dirty? What's going on? And why hasn't the dog been fed? I mean, and my wife's like, dude, welcome home.
Yeah.
And so over the last couple of years, I've really been trying to focus on that so that my kids don't think that all I care about is making sure that the floor is vacuumed and the floor is swept,
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank God for wives that will grab a hold of us and be like, hey, you need to get,
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Dial it in. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate both of you, and I'm happy you're in my life, and I'm excited about where this is going, and I want to do this again. I think we could do this again on a couple of different things, different topics.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm about wrapped up. I don't have a whole lot else to add, other than just thanks for everybody else for joining us. I hope you get something out of this. Would love to see comments and questions or whatever you've got. And DR, anything else?
No, I just appreciate again, Jared, for being with us. By the way, Jared, you're in the financial business.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So just helping people navigate with their financial preparation and making sure their future looks bright for them. That's what I do.
So if anyone is out there looking for someone to sit down and give them some good advice and advise them through things, especially with what's going on. I've known Jared for quite a few years now, and he's an outstanding individual, and would strongly encourage you to get an opportunity to sit down with him. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone as well. Thanks for the opportunity to share, and please continue to join in with us. And remember, man, everyday life is just about, you just got to keep stepping.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
Hey, y'all. Thanks again for tuning in this week. Nothing about being a parent is easy. We're continually distracted with what's going on with the world around us. Our kids are continually wanting to engage and be with us. And the thing is by worrying about what we're missing out on, we're really going to be missing out on what's going on in their lives. Somebody's going to raise our kids, whether it be whoever they go hang around, or the social media they tune into, or the video games they play. Someone's going to be raising them, instilling things into them. And they're going to be looking for things they need. And what we need to be focusing on is the things like attention, giving them our attention, understanding, showing them grace, giving them guidance, giving them boundaries, and loving on them. You can never love on your kids too much. And it's more than just telling them you love them. Hug on them. Get in their space. Let them know you're there. Get in their face and talk to them. Let them feel you. Let them feel your love. I promise you, you'll never look back and say, I wish I would have spent a little less time with my kids.
You can now catch Chasing Relevance on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if that's just too much handsome for you, you can just listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, or Google Podcasts. As always, thanks for your support.